Changed my mind, I am recording it. You can't record it after it's over. All right, so it is a frame story. And the frame story is like Canterbury Tales, where the trip to Canterbury was the frame, and then there are individual stories within it. Here, the frame is Conrad, and 4 other people are sitting on a ship, a sailing ship, in the Thames River, waiting to leave on a trip. So Conrad and 4 other people. This inside of the frame is Marlowe, one of the people on the ship, telling a story. Right? So that's what the book is really about. Marlowe telling this story within the frame. The story is within the frame of Marlowe and Conrad. Marlowe actually appears in 2 other stories, Lord Jim and Youth. I've read Lord Jim and didn't remember Marlowe was that character. So he's someone he has used before. The themes are of imperialism and colonialism. Do you know what those mean? Right. Imperialism and colonialism involve terms that involve countries, European countries in the late 19th century that were controlling other countries like Africa, China, India, those countries. All the European countries kind of grabbed the rest of the world, and they were doing that so they could get natural resources. These countries had things that the France didn't have. Well, France wasn't too much. They were somewhat in it. England was the big one. England had more of these colonies than anybody else. And it was usually bad because they were taking advantage of the people. And finally, the influence of Impressionism, Private Juve-Raleigh. Remember Red Badger Courage? That he would describe the way the tree felt, not so much what it looked like. Like he wasn't describing the actual tree, he was describing what the effect of the tree was on him. You get some of that here. You're never quite sure where they are. Sometimes you're kind of behind, okay, I figured out now where they are. He didn't make that real clear, because it didn't matter to him. Can I go on? All right, contrast. This is one of the big things about the book that you need to be aware of. The book contains a series of contrasts. Wilderness and civilization, 2 opposites. The jungle is pretty wild. England, Belgium, and Germany are pretty civilized. So you got those contrasts. You got the Thames, it's spelled T-H-A-M-E-S, but pronounced more like it's just T-I-M-S. All right, the Thames River is the river that runs right through London and out to the Channel, the English Channel, and the Atlantic Ocean. And the Congo also runs into the Atlantic Ocean, but it's in Africa. It empties into the Atlantic. Light and dark. The name of the book is Heart of Darkness, and along with white and black, you see contrast of that. You see contrast of a light, and we'll see that at the very beginning, against the twilight of a day. Kurtz and Marlowe are contrasts. One's German, one's English, but they're both, well, one's a sailor and one's not. There are lots of contrasts, but they are the 2 key characters in the book. Romans, Europeans, and Africans, especially Europeans and Africans, are contrasted. The Romans are interesting. We'll see those at the beginning. Kurtz has 2 girlfriends. He's not married to either one of them. He has a European girlfriend, fiance, and he has an African girlfriend, fiance. They call them intended. That sounds like an old-fashioned word for fiance. And then one of the interesting things about Africa is for the European, because they get sick, and I've never had malaria, you probably haven't either, but it's like the flu. It drains you of energy and strength. The climate is really hot, sticky, wet. And so it tends to what's a word? Well, it tends to sap people of their strength and energy. The Africans, however, are used to it. They seem to be vitalized by it. So you have the Africans are usually, but not always, but usually described with vitality and strength and life. And the Europeans that are down there are often described as lazy, confused, that kind of thing. So that's an important contrast. He said the devil, there are two kinds of devils. One's the flabby devil and one's the passionate devil. And we'll talk about that. What's evil about being lazy? Why is that evil? It's just lazy. That's not evil. You're not hurting anybody. Or are you? Why would that be considered bad or evil? You know, if you hurt people, you know, you're constantly. But what about being lazy? What's bad about that? Well, and along those lines, inefficiency is bad. Like if you do things inefficiently, the book presents that idea that just because you're not consciously hurting somebody doesn't mean you're not hurting somebody. Your laziness might hurt people, and your inefficiency might cost people. I just think this is interesting. First of all, we will read a poem called The Hollow Men by T.S. Eliot. Next year you'll have Dr. Bedsole again. He did his doctorate dissertation on T.S. Eliot. So he's quite familiar with The Hollow Men. He does it, I think he may do it. I talk to him every year because we do it, and I don't feel like I really understand it. I don't recommend it. I can't recommend it because I've never seen it. But the only film version of this book that I've ever heard of, and there may be more, is a book called Apocalypse Now. It was I think a 1980s maybe, Vietnam War movie. And it's pretty obviously based on this with a lot of differences. We're talking about Cambodia and Vietnam as opposed to Africa. But there's still a lot of connections between those two. And I love this. Conrad, when he died, wrote this. Well, he didn't write this. Edmund Spencer wrote this. And so he had it placed on his gravestone. Sleep after toil, port after stormy seas, ease after war, death after life does greatly please. I like that. It's time for rest. You've lived hard. You've lived an active, busy life. You hadn't been lazy. You hadn't wasted your time. Death is kind of a blessing if you're a believer. I don't know if you will. They do call it rest in peace. For believers, yes, there's a sense of rest, final, ultimate rest. We have about 15 minutes. Yeah. So we're gonna. Have I given you the book yet? I think, let me make sure this was the last one. Finally marked, I would think so. Yeah. So let me get you a copy of the book.